Alright, so in this video we will go over how to solve triangle angles algebraically. So we have this figure here, and it's a triangle, and what's given is 110 degrees of an exterior angle. We see that the vertex angle is named x, and one of the base angles is named y. And we see that two of the sides are congruent. So right away, when we see that two sides are congruent, we know that this triangle right here is an isosceles triangle. So the first thing we want to do is we want to label it as isosceles. Now what does that mean? Well, it means that the triangle has two equal sides. Okay, so we could say this is an isosceles triangle. But what else does it mean? Well, we know, according to the isosceles triangle theorem, that the angles opposite the sides have to also be congruent. So since we know that, we can mark up our triangle with another base angle equaling y degrees. Now how does that help us? Well, that helps us because we know a couple of things about triangles. The first thing that we know about triangles is that when you have an exterior angle like the 110, we know an exterior angle theorem. And what does that theorem says? That theorem says that x, we can see x degrees plus y degrees equals 110 degrees. Now what does that mean? Where do I get that from? Well, that theorem says that the two angles opposite the exterior angle, meaning these, I'll underline them, the two angles that do not form a linear pair with that exterior angle, those two angles, added up, the sum of those two angles equals the exterior angle, which is here. That's where we got that equation. Another equation we could have wrote is this, that 110 degrees plus y degrees equals 180 degrees. Now where did I get that from? Well, I'll underline it in a different color. We know we got the 110, and we're looking at this angle, 110 degree angle, and the y degree angle form a linear pair. So that means that their measures have to equal 180 degrees. Now, does that help us at all? Well, yeah, that definitely helps us. Is there another equation we can write? Absolutely. We know that the sum of all the angles in a triangle equal 180 degrees. So let's write that. We can write that x degree plus y degree plus y degree equals 180 degrees. So now we have three equations that we can use. Now, do we need to have three equations? No. Two equations is fine. Now, why do we need two equations? Because when you have two unknowns, you always need two equations. So which equations would you like to use? I would like to use these. And I'm gonna mark them. I like to use this equation right here and this equation. It's personal preference. You could use any of the equations, but the reason why I like those, I think they're simple equations, and we don't have to do too much computation. So let's see what we have to do here. Let's simplify this equation down here. So I'm just going to draw an arrow like this just to simplify this, and we know that that is x plus 2y equals 180. And I'm going to use this, so I'll just put the arrow so we can look at our two equations that we're going to use. X plus y equals 110. So what do we do here? Well, we want to use what's called a substitution method. And what that means is, since we have two variables and two equations, let's solve one of the equations for a variable and then substitute that in to the other equation. So I'm going to solve the above equation, the top equation, for x. And when I solve for x, I see that x has to equal 110 minus y. Now, where did I get that? I moved the y over. So I'll show you that here in a different color. I subtracted that y, I brought it over to the other side, and that's where I got this equation. So now that I solve for x, I can now substitute that x in for the x down here. And when I do that, I'll write that in a different color, I get that 110 minus y. Now when I substitute, I always put in parentheses, so I know exactly what I'm putting in. I'm substituting that x in, plus, well, I'll keep it a different color so you can see the substitution, plus 2y equals 180 degrees. So now when we're looking at this, does the parentheses do anything? Well, we have nothing connected to the parentheses. All we have is an addition sign. And when you have an addition sign or a subtraction sign, you could just get rid of the parentheses and you can start to combine the like terms. So when we combine the like terms, we get 110 plus y equals 180. Now we can see that we just bring over the 110, we bring over the 110, and we see that y has to equal 70 degrees. Okay, so if y equals 70 degrees, we know that the two base angles have to equal one another. They're congruent because the two sides are congruent. We know that from the isosceles triangle theorem. So we can say that we have a y which is 70. We can say that the other y equals 70. And now what about the x? Well, there's two ways we can do it. We can either substitute the 70 back into the equation, or we can just figure out really quickly that 70 plus 70 is 140. And now what's left? We know a triangle is 180 degrees, so that means x equals 40 degrees. When you check, we see that these combine, the sum of all the angles in a triangle equal 180 degrees. I'll even show up here. This formula right there, if we were to substitute the information back in, we would see the answer. So I'll put in a different color. 110 minus our new y, which is 70. And we can see that it indeed equals 40 degrees. That's crazy. When you have equations that all make sense, algebra works wonders. So there is not one way to solve this problem. There's multiple ways with multiple equations. If you can see it, and if you can understand the definitions that you learned in class, then each and every one of you can solve these triangle angle problems algebraically. Just make sure that you're staying true to all the definitions that we learned.